My name is Carrie Terzieff, and 3.5 years ago I was going to die of a drug overdose. But then God sent me a message. This is my personal testimony about what he did in my life. Let's dive right in. I grew up in a Christian home with a Christian family, excellent people surrounding me. And I was raised in the church, but I never felt God. I had this poisonous idea in my head that Christians don't suffer, but from a really young age I had suicidal thoughts and ideations, and I just felt a lot of pain inside. And this conflicted with my idea of what it meant to be a Christian, so I thought that God didn't love me because of this. As I got older, I started looking around at the lives of people in the church I went to, and I started looking at the behavior of Christian people that was not so loving, because of course, we're not all perfect. We're supposed to love like Jesus, but we always fall short of this. But I didn't understand this. I thought that, if you're a Christian, you're perfect, you have to be perfect, and you can never make mistakes, you can never be a hypocrite. And, anybody that, is a Christian now knows that we're not perfect. That's why we need Christ. But I didn't understand this. So I started to look around and begin to think that I was better than everybody. And I saw the way that some people use the Bible as a tool of hatred, as a justification for hating other people. And so I assumed that this is what God was about. I assumed that God hated other people, and I assumed that God was mean, and I assumed that God was hypocritical. And I never even bothered to read the Bible. I never bothered to go through and see what it actually said. And I never truly deeply understood what being a Christian was. So I decided at the age of 14 that I wasn't a Christian. And I publicly came out about that, left the church. So I was atheist for several years, and then I got into New Age spiritualism. And by the time I was 21, I was so addicted to drugs and alcohol, I could not go a single day without it. And I had these horrible nightmares where I would just be pinned down by something in my room, and people call this sleep paralysis, and they have the scientific explanation for it, but if you've ever been through it, it's spiritual. It is really deeply terrifying. The other thing was that I had just this feeling of being crazy all the time. I just felt like I was out of my mind, or sometimes I was not in control of myself and something else was controlling me. I was living away from my home in Denver, Colorado, and I had everybody fooled. I was hiding my addiction from everybody. The people closest to me had no idea how deep in I was. At one point, I got so bad that I would overdose on drugs, and I would be having a seizure, blacking out, falling unconscious onto the floor, and my last thought would be, no, someone's gonna come home that I love and find me like this on my floor, dead. And how can I do that? How could I do that to somebody I love? But then I would wake up and I would remember that as my last thought, and I would immediately start doing drugs again. I wouldn't go to the hospital, and I wouldn't stop. I would just keep going, even knowing that I could potentially hurt somebody that I really loved a lot. At this point, I just didn't even have the capacity to put anybody else first. It was just this addiction. So one night I was laying down, and I heard this voice say to me, "You're gonna die if you keep doing this." And I just knew that it was true. I knew immediately that this was truth, that I was going to die if I didn't stop. So I was like, okay, what do I do? And the voice was like, pray. And I was like, no, I am not doing that. No. Because I knew immediately that it meant pray to God, Jesus and the Christian God of the universe. And so I was like, no, I'm not doing that, because I was vehemently anti-Christian. But the voice kept saying to me over and over again, pray. And so I really knew that if I didn't pray, that I was going to die somehow from drugs, probably an overdose. So I got down on my knees for the first time in about 10 years, and I prayed, and I cannot even believe that God answered me, because I was sitting there and I was like, God, if you're real, which I don't believe you are, then you can make me want to quit. And I don't want to quit, but I think you're telling me to, so if you're out there, then make me want to. And I just can't even believe that God answered me. But he did. He really did. And the next thing I heard is that voice come back and say, call your mom. And I was like, if I don't call my mom, I'm gonna die. So I don't want to call my mom and tell her everything, but I do. I just call her. And so I go out and I call my mom and I'm like, I am addicted to drugs. I'm a mess. I'm addicted to alcohol. I can't stop. And I'm gonna die if I don't quit. God told me I'm gonna die. So she's like, you need to come home right now. And so a week later, I was on my way home and I was in this town stopping at a gas station. And I was washing my hands, and this lady came up next to me, and just with this loving heart, she was like, can I pray for you? And I was like, what? What? You want to pray for me? Like, I had never had a stranger ask if they could pray for me. I don't even know if I had people in my church ask if they could pray for me before. I never experienced somebody randomly asking me that, can I pray for you? And it was so loving. There was no judgment in it. It was just so sweet and pure. And so I immediately started crying, and I was just like, how did you know? And I just broke down right there. I start crying. And this woman sat with me for 3 hours, praying with me in a gas station bathroom. That is love. That is the kind of love that Jesus commands us to have. She didn't know me. She had nothing to benefit from me. She wasn't from that town. She was on her way through to another town. She just wanted to sit with me and pray with me for 3 hours. That's crazy. She started saying things that only God would know about me. And I was like, this is so weird. What? And at that point, I wasn't ready to accept Jesus in that moment, but I was like, okay, wow, this is real. This is really real. And the last thing is, finally, when I was okay to keep driving and move on, and before she left, she said, okay, I'm going to leave you now, but I want you to know that as soon as I leave, there's a few boys sitting outside, and I think that they're going to come in and they're going to try to drag you back into your old life. And so I was immediately like, whoa, no, that's not going to happen, whatever. And I just didn't believe it. And so she left, and it was instant. It was like immediately these boys that had been sitting outside came in and started following me around the convenience store and trying to talk to me, trying to ask me my name, trying to ask me about my motorcycle. Like, they were just really like predatory. And it was just this evil feeling. Not that they were evil. I think that they were lost in their own way and that they had their own journey to go through. I pray that they came out of that journey in a good place, but it was no doubt spiritual warfare. So I was like, nope, I'm out, gone. So I left immediately and I start driving home. And finally, I get home and I accepted Jesus that night. But I didn't fully choose to follow Jesus at that moment. I accepted him and I said, okay, I'll tell people I'm a Christian and you're allowed to be in my life, kind of you're allowed to come in and I'll be a God person, but I'm not gonna go to church, I'm not gonna read the Bible, I'm not gonna go and do all these Christian things. I don't even know what that means, but I accepted Jesus verbally. So then I got through the process of getting clean off of drugs, but I started drinking more, way more, to replace the feeling of being on drugs. I decided that I was ready to go back to Denver, and so I moved back, and I was not ready. I was drinking like crazy, and at this point, alcoholism was almost worse than drug addiction. Not quite, but then something really horrible happened to me, and I survived it, and that is a story for another time, but it was the grace of God that I came out of that, but I was really upset about it, so I relapsed on drugs. I was totally irresponsible. I did not take care of myself. I got so drunk that I just relapsed, and I was really upset about this when I realized what I had done and how much I had worked for and then just given up in a minute. So I was really upset. And then I hurt my best friend. I put her in a dangerous spot. I hurt her feelings really, really bad, and I was just really inconsiderate. Again, alcohol was coming first still at this point. So I woke up the next morning from that, and I just thought, you know what? I can't do this. I keep saying I'm not going to drink as much, but then the next day I wake up, and the first thing I do is drink beer, and I can't get free. And I can't get free of drugs now. I've relapsed again. It's all I think about. I'm done. done trying. And so I decided I was going to kill myself. So I got on top of a building and I sat there thinking about my mom and thinking about all the people in my life. But then there was still this small voice saying, what if you can? Like, what if you can do it? What if you can get out? What if you can live a life without drugs and alcohol? God told you he was going to help you, so maybe he's still going to help you. So the cops and the EMTs came, and I, thank God, decided to go with them. And I got down off the roof, and I was put into a rehab program. And I was detoxed off of alcohol and drugs, and they diagnosed me with bipolar and put me on medication. So, quick thing is that I had suspicions of being bipolar my entire life. I had this like psychotic anger episodes, and then like crazy paranoia, and then really bad depression for weeks at a time, and I was very messy as a teenager and even a child. Classic symptoms, but I'd never been diagnosed, and this was the first time I had been. So they put me on medication, and by the third day on medication, I was like, whoa, I feel normal. Like, I'm not on drugs, I'm not on alcohol, and for the first time in my life, I'm happy about that, and I feel really normal, just sober. And so this was a huge revelation to me, and this was basically what God said that he had for me, is that I will bring you out of this, and I'll give you a life outside of this. You just have to trust me. And so I came out of that rehab program, and I moved in with my brother and his wife to a new city. God bless them for taking me in, because that was so selfless of them. They took a huge risk. Man. Then I got a job at a coffee shop, and I met a pastor there, and I started talking to him. And I started taking everything really seriously. I started taking my health seriously. I wasn't going to drink or do drugs at all. I started taking my spirituality seriously. I was going to start exploring this like being a Christian thing. And I started taking relationships seriously. I decided I was not going to be around people that didn't have my best interest in mind, and I was not going to be around other people that were addicted to drugs and alcohol, because I couldn't handle it at that point. So I met my husband. And on our first date, I decided I'm going to tell him everything about me. I'm going to be so super truthful because I'm taking relationships seriously and I'm done hiding who I am and pretending to be a different girl. So I just told him, I was like, I'm a drug addict in recovery and an alcoholic, and here I am. This is my life. I ruined it, but now I'm going back and I'm a Christian now, and here we go. And I asked him, I said, well, do you drink or party or anything? Because I wasn't going to keep like hanging out with him if he was a drinker or a partier. And he was like, no, actually, I've never done drugs or touched alcohol in my entire life. I was like, what? Are you serious? I had never met anybody that he hadn't even smoked a cigarette in his whole life. He still has not done any of these things. I was like, oh my gosh. So we hit it off. And the other thing that night is that I told him, like, yeah, I'm a Christian, but I don't believe in the Bible. And he was like, so you believe in God and that he's like, omnipotent, he knows everything, he's in control of everything, but you don't believe that he has like the potential to keep his word from being polluted? Because the reason I told him I didn't believe the Bible is because men wrote it. He's like, you don't think God could have inspired that? And I was like, huh, you're right. So then at that point I realized, well, I've never read the Bible. So if I'm going to say that I don't believe in the Bible, I need to at least read it and see what it says before I make that decision and see what it's all about. So I started the journey of reading the Bible, and right about that time that coincided with my medication stopping working, I developed an allergic reaction to the first medication I was on, which was really good for me, but I was going to die if I kept taking it. And the next one was just horrible. It was a tranquilizer. Sleeping 16 hours a day is terrible. And then I couldn't go on any other ones because they were too expensive. So my husband and I, well, boyfriend at the time, we prayed about it. And I talked to my therapist and my family and my pastor, and I felt like God was telling me to stop taking the medication. And this was really scary for me at the time because I thought, well, what if I go crazy again and I get back on drugs and alcohol and I can't help myself because I feel so weird when I'm not on medication? But ultimately, I decided to commit to this and trust God off of medication. Real quick, I do want to say I am not a medical professional. So if you are on medication for any kind of mental illnesses, you should not take my story as advice. If you decide to ever change or modify your medication or stop taking it, you need to consult your therapist, whoever's prescribing your medication, your family, your pastor, your support network. You need to talk to everybody and ask them to help you with it, because it's not something you should take lightly and just, la-di-da, go off your medication. So please take that advice. It wasn't easy immediately. In fact, the first 3 months were horrible. It was a nightmare of mood swings and wildness, but I stayed clean. And throughout all this, I got really, really heavy on the Bible. I was like, I'm going to read this every single day, and it's going to be my lifeline, because I started to notice the more I read it, the better I felt, and the more my brain made sense, and the more I felt stable. The last thing that happened is, you remember those crazy nightmares I told you about, is this is a story for another day, because it's so insane what happened, but God literally healed me of those too, and gosh, I can't wait to tell you about it. It was crazy. After all this, I never looked back. I experienced wild healing in a way that I didn't even know was possible, and I'm so grateful for that. And I have 3 huge takeaways if you're watching this. Number 1, my healing was not immediate. It was gradual, but it was great. Everybody's story is different, and some people are healed immediately, and some people are not healed immediately. So if I had chosen to jump that day, I would have missed all of the healing that I experienced. But I trusted God. Thank God I trusted God, and here I am. I will never look back. Number 2 is praying the prayer for me was the first step. I accepted Jesus, but I did not accept him into my heart to change me. I decided my own ways were still the ways, and the real healing started when I started accepting Jesus into my heart, and I started allowing Jesus to change me and allowing God to change me and tell me what I needed to change. That is when my life took off. And the final thing is, there is hope for you and everyone. I've since met people that have crazy stories, even crazier than mine, way crazier than mine. And years ago, if you told me who I would be, I would say you were nuts. I would never believe it. And I just didn't even know healing like this was possible. So if you're waiting for healing or deliverance from something, keep having faith, because there's hope for you and everybody else. So I just want to finish this off by praying with you. And I don't know what the protocol is for praying through YouTube, but God is the God of everything, so he's the God of YouTube too. So if you're comfortable, please close your eyes, fold your hands, and pray with me. But let's pray for your healing or people in your life that need healing. Father, thank you that I have this story to tell people, to point them to how powerful and good you are to us, even when we don't deserve it. I pray for healing for whoever is watching this, for the family of whoever is watching this, the friends of whoever is watching this. Please heal them physically and emotionally, mentally. Please heal them from anything they're suffering from, God, and show them how their suffering can eventually be turned into serving. How can this change their life, and what kind of story does this tell about you? If anybody's reaching out to you, God, I pray that you would come in and touch their life and give them hope and peace and restoration. Please heal us all, especially in this hard time. Heal our families, broken families, whole families. Heal our finances. Help us to have peace. Heal our minds again. Heal our physical bodies, our lungs, our blood, everything. Heal everything for us, please, Father. And draw us closer to you at all times. Thank you for this opportunity to come together across time zones and time, and through YouTube and all the other mediums. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Wow. Thank you for watching this. The last thing I want to say is that if you are not Christian, but you want to know God, ask him. If you're watching my video and you're like, wow, I wonder if my life could have this kind of story, it can, and even better. If you want that kind of power in your life, that kind of healing and that kind of clarity and the burden lifted off of your shoulders, ask him. Because the Bible says in Romans 10:9-10, that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised him from the dead, you will be saved. For it is with your heart that you believe and are justified, and is with your mouth that you confess and are saved. That's all we have to do. to accept this healing is to confess with our mouth that Jesus is King and believe and allow him into our hearts to change us and to heal us. The last thing is that Ephesians 2:8-9 say, "For by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not your own doing. It is the gift of God, not a result of works, so that no one may boast." What this means is that we don't have to do the heavy lifting of being a perfect person. God sent Jesus to die for us so that he could be in our life, even though we are imperfect. We all make mistakes. None of us are good or perfect people. If you take an honest look into your life, there are things that you have done, that I have done, everyone has done, that are absolutely depraved, but God doesn't care. He wipes the slate completely clean, and he says, no matter who you are, I accept you, and I love you, and I have saved you because I love you. All you have to do is believe in this. All you have to do is choose this. So, the love is there, and I pray that you choose it. I pray that it becomes your story too. Thank you so much for watching this. If you've experienced healing from God, or if you have a testimony, you should share it. Please comment on the video, share your testimony on Facebook. Please make your own YouTube video with your testimony so that somebody can hear it, because somebody out there has a story like yours, and they're waiting to hear what God did in your life, to know what he can do in their life. So share, because this is the greatest gift that we can receive, is healing and acceptance and love from God. So give other people that gift. Share your story. God bless you. Thank you.